Video also okay. Let me just send the link to join the class to Dhruv. He's wanting that. One moment, Dhruv. Okay, sorry about that. Hare Krishna. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari. Jaya Girivaradhari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayo Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari. Jayo Girivaradhari. Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayo Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari. Jayo Girivaradhari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jayo Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari. Jayo Girivaradhari. Jayo Yashodanandana Jayo Braja Jananana Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jayo Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe, Jayo Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe, Jayo Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe, Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol. Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada. Shri Hari Ram Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nittai Gaur Premanande, Hari 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 Bol. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday program at ISKCON Manchester. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today, as opposed to freezing outside in the cold weather. So it's a good use of time. So Gauranath Raj Prabhu, thank you for the opportunity. Gauranath Raj Prabhu is the head of many departments, including the head of learning and development.
Servants, so we're all servants.
Speaking of, in charge or head of developments, actually, all of us are responsible for our own development, truly speaking. And all of us who've taken upon the instructions of Prabhupada and are reposing our faith in the words of the acharyas and the scriptures have an immense responsibility and some obligation to not just take care of our own selves, but also share this message of love and peace with as many people as possible. There is a little book, Perfect Questions and Perfect Answers. This is a conversation between Srila Prabhupada, our founder, Acharya, and a U.S. Corps peace worker, Bob Cohen, in which Prabhupada's mentioned, in a few other places also, Bharat Bhumi te hoila manushe janma jar, janama sarthaka kari kara para upakar. Means, especially for people who are of Indian origin or are taking birth in holy places, not just for them, but for anybody who's taken upon the message of Krishna, as in the Bhagavad Gita, it is essential and almost obligatory to not just help our own selves, but share this message of love and peace and a formula for achieving permanent happiness and satisfaction with as many people as possible. So even though we are very comfortable in our own spaces, it is still not lost upon us that there are a number of other people who are in not very comfortable scenarios. There is a lot of suffering and unhappiness that people are having to go through. So, what I wanted to do was just at the start, before we get into the subject matter, we wanted to together just recite one verse from Bhagavatam as uh, in memory or in favor of all those people who are, for some or the other reason, not very fortunate like we are to be uh, to have taken the shelter of the holy name and the Lord. So I'll just, Prabhu, I have host rights. Am I able to share my screen? Okay.
Yeah, I'm giving just 1 minute.
Okay, Prabhu, yeah. So we'll read the translation of the verse first, and then I'll try and sing the Sanskrit so we understand what is it that we are reciting. So screen share, and here we go. Please let me know if you can see the screen. Is the screen visible?
Yes, we are able
Okay.
to see the screen.
Okay, Prabhu. So may I request a volunteer, or I'll nominate Sarvaki Prabhu. Are you able to read the translation?
Yes.
Translation of the verse, yes.
Alas, when the sun rises, all auspicious things begin. Unfortunately,
Rangu, ikkada,
just like desertry, a Vaishnava can.
Translation.
Translation, sorry.
May there be good fortune through the universe, and may all envious persons be pacified. May all living entities become calm by practicing bhakti yoga. For by accepting devotional service, they will think of each other's welfare. Therefore, let us all engage in the service of Supreme Transcendence, Lord Sri Krishna, and always remain absorbed in thoughts of Him.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. So that's the translation of the verse, and it's a beautiful prayer in Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just bring the verse up now here. So I'll just read on behalf of all of us for peace and auspiciousness throughout the world. This is from the fifth canto, chapter 18, verse number 9, as you can see on the screen. It's very beautifully sung by one of our god sisters, Janavi Devi. And you can find the audio video recording freely on YouTube. So have a listen. So the verse is Swastya astu vishvasya kala prasidatam dhyayamstu bhutani shivam mitodaya manascha bhadram bhajitadadokshaje aveshitam no matirapi tuki. And then if you listen to the song, it goes into chanting the names of the Lord, Hari, Hari Om Tat Sat. So that's just a beautiful prayer I wanted to share with everyone. When you get the chance, please recite and listen to the audio version for welfare, peace, and prosperity for everyone who is not so fortunate to have taken the shelter of the Lord, his instructions, or his devotees. So thank you for that. So today we are studying from the Bhagavad Gita, and the chapter is chapter 17, entitled The Divisions of Faith. And at the start, the first verse of the chapter is very wonderfully uh, placed with Arjuna on our behalf, asking a very simple question. And I'll give you the verbatim of what Arjuna is saying. He says, Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scriptures but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? So, before we try and get into what Arjuna is really asking and how Krishna responds, the underlying principle is that there has to be a certain amount of faith and belief in the fact that there is a supreme controller who is responsible for everything, animate, inanimate, and therefore we, as his part and parcels, have a sense of gratitude to express. Mm. A number of times this question is asked in discussions as to whether people who go to the temple or chant or how do deity worship, are those the only kind of people who are religious? Uh, is uh, is doing all those activities classed as being religious or spiritual? What about the others who don't do any of those things? So the response to such a question is that the underlying principle, like I just said, has to be an acknowledgement of the fact that the Lord is supreme, we are his part and parcels, and because of this relationship, we have a sense of gratitude to express. Mm. It is like any relationship we are maintaining in this world. If I have a child, for instance, and I try and tell my child from a distance, I love you, I am thinking about you, and I am your caretaker and well wisher. But I do not exchange or do not engage in any kind of exchange of this expression. I don't give him time. I don't sit down with him. I don't have a chat with him. I don't play with him. I don't do any other activity with him. If there is no physical exchange of the expression, then what do you think will happen to the relationship? Will that uh, be a good relationship that'll nurture, or will it eventually, over a period of time, die down? So the same principle applies, when we recognize the fact that the Lord is the Supreme Father and we are connected to Him, it is our obligation as a basis of that relationship to express our emotions. Now, the expression of emotion can happen uh, as per your ability and your desire. There is obviously no need to engage in very elaborate worship if your resources do not permit. There is a nice story from Lord Buddha's time where Lord Buddha used to conduct public events where he would meet all the people in that area on a regular basis. So once he was holding such meeting, and he was obviously surrounded by people who would observe him conduct these sessions. So a number of kings and ministers and officials came, and they gave jewels and money, and all sorts of opulent gifts were brought in front of Lord Buddha. And he acknowledged, and he simply sat down at his place without making any sort of additional expression. But after a certain time, there was an old lady who visited Lord Buddha, and she came and she offered a half-eaten pomegranate to Lord Buddha, sat there, receiving everyone's gifts. And as soon as the old lady did that, Lord stood up from his seat and very, very graciously touched the old lady's feet and received her very nicely, gave her a seat to sit down, and gave her all the respects. So after the day's proceedings were over, the Lord's disciples asked him, uh, "My Lord, can you explain? There were so many gifts of very high value that you didn't seem to acknowledge, but a half-eaten pomegranate was more dear to you with the way you reciprocated with the old lady." So Lord Buddha said, all those kings and ministers and officials who gave me those opulent gifts only gave me a tiny fraction of what they have been supplied with by the Lord. However, the old lady, when she gave half the pomegranate, that was all she had for the rest of the week to eat. So tell me, whose contribution and whose sacrifice is bigger? So, with the example of this story, we understand that the Lord is not really looking for the volume or the enormity of our physical act of sacrifices. Krishna is understood to be Bhavagrahi Janardana. He is simply looking for the sincerity of the expression with which we approach him, not really the process or the elaboration of the activities which we engage in. So the underlying principle is that we need to have some level of expression to to confirm that we recognize the relationship we have with the Lord, like we do in all our relationships on a regular basis. And the other point is that there is only as much as is your ability to how far you should go. Because Krishna is Bhavagrihi Janardana. So with that principle, we just try and get into a few verses from Bhagavad Gita, this chapter, Divisions of Faith. And we'll try and take away a few messages given to us by the Lord himself and by Srila Prabhupada in his purports. So the purport to the first verse actually also comments a little bit about what is the right mood for somebody acting on the platform of devotional service is. And Prabhupada very clearly mentions that either there are only two categories of people, one who believe or confirm to the scriptural injunctions that are known as suras, and the other who do not confirm to the scriptural injunctions known as asuras or non-believers. Now, Arjuna's question, he understands because he's speaking on our behalf, is on behalf of all of us. So what about people who are in between? They believe but not fully believe, and therefore they have their own ideas about doing things. Even though there is so much information available on what the right process is. And we take a step back to try and understand, how do we get to this stage if there is so much information clearly available in the scriptures and the acharyas are repeatedly saying, how do we get to this confused in-between state where we are trying to do our own thing? And it's very simple. We are essentially spiritual entities. We are nirguna essentially. But because of the fact that we have taken so many births again and again and again, and as a result have continuously been associating with the material nature, we get influenced by its three modes. And as a result, we are sometimes acting either on the level of goodness, where we feel charitable or kind to people. Then we switch to being on the mode of passion when we demonstrate anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride, etc. Or we fall down to the level of ignorance where we are engaging in abominable or sinful activities, sometimes like feeding on other living beings, which are not prescribed. So, um, Arjuna's question is on behalf of us, and the understanding is that because we have uh, been taking so many births, bahunam janmanam ante, therefore we all end up being in that situation where we are taking in the instructions of the acharyas and listening to scriptures, etc. But we sometimes, under the influence of these three modes of material nature, end up being in that confused stage where we want to have our own spin on things. So I'll just try and request volunteers to maybe read the translation to the second verse of this chapter. I'm just going to bring it up on the screen now. So far, we've just tried to understand what our situation is and how appropriate it is for Arjuna to be asking that question. Am I still sharing my screen? Or
No.
No.
We can't see the screen. But
Yes.
You got the rights to share it.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you so much. Share the screen. So this is 17.2. Dhruv, can you read the translation, please?
Yes, sure. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds, in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So can you just read the purport as well, please? It's a short one.
Yes, sure. Those who know the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but out of laziness or in dullness, give up following these rules and regulations, are governed by the modes of material nature, according to their previous activities in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. They acquire a nature which is of a specific quality. The association of the living entity with the different modes of nature has been going on perpetually, since the living entity is in contact with material nature. He acquires different types of mentality according to his association with the material modes. But this nature can be changed if one associates with a bona fide spiritual master and abides by his rules and the scriptures. Gradually, one can change his position from ignorance to goodness, or from passion to goodness. The conclusion is that blind faith in a particular mode of nature cannot help a person become elevated to the perfectional stage. One has to consider things carefully, with intelligence and the association of a bona fide spiritual master. Thus, one can change his position to a higher mode of nature.
Thank you. So it was important to read the translation to fully understand, what is our position, as I just mentioned, of this in-between confused stage where we do not have full faith on the words of the scriptures and the spiritual master. But there's a good reassurance that Prabhupada's giving in the purport is that uh, even though the living being acquires different kind of mentality, having come in contact with different modes of nature, it can all be taken care of if he comes into contact with a bona fide spiritual master. The exact sentence is, this nature can be changed if one associates with a bona fide spiritual master and abides by the rules of the scriptures, abides by the spiritual master's rule and the rules of the scriptures. Now, understandably, because of our ongoing association with the modes of material nature, we have become very rigid and very hard and very difficult to change in our ways. And therefore, we need some kind of austerity or tapasya, to be able to change in a way that we are able to uh, realize our permanent relationship with the Lord. And that essentially is the topic for today's discussion, austerity or tapasya. And what is the motivation to be doing tapasya? What is non-recommended tapasya? And what is the recommended tapasya or austerity that we should be engaging in? Tapasya obviously comes from the word tapa, or uh, heating up or putting us through an examination or some sort of process, which initially is not so easy to take up, but if we persevere, it will purify us. Like gold is gold reaches its stage after going through the process of getting heated up, the metal getting heated up in the furnace, etc. So again, the understanding is that because of our conditioned nature, in order to perfectly realize our relationship with the Lord and engage in the expression of loving devotional service, we have to undergo some sort of austerity, some sort of tapasya for our own purification, so that we eventually are able to successfully get out of the three modes of material nature, which continue to influence us and pull us in one or the other direction. Because it might be asked, why do I have to, engage in any sort of austerity? If I have a beautiful house and everything is set up, and children are doing well, and I have enough money, my qualification is in place. Maybe I'll do it at a later stage. But in the pursuit of perfection, when we are trying to have a perfect childhood, a perfect youth, a perfect marriage, a perfect work relationship, a perfect house, then perfect grandchildren, and then perfect funeral. Before you know, the time is up. So there is really no time to waste. And we need to, as soon as possible, recognize the fact that if we need to get out of the influence of these three modes of material nature, we must take upon a process of austerity or some kind of tapasya or some kind of purificatory process. So tapa or austerity, conjures up some sort of penance, sitting in a very difficult physical position, going to the forest, not eating food, etc., but not necessarily. And the other point is that as living beings, we are quite used to the concept of performing austerities. For mothers and parents, we know that right at the time of birth, giving birth to a child is in itself a physically enduring experience. So we are quite trained to perform some of the other austerities. But what happens is we lose the right motivation to perform austerity over a period of time, remaining under the influence of the modes of nature. And while scriptures tell us that while the child is in the womb of the mother, he's praying to the Lord, oh, please, my Lord, just give me the opportunity to get out of this dark place that I'm locked and trapped in. And once I get out, I'm going to chant your names. But as soon as he comes out, he starts chanting Mama, Papa, Mama, Papa. And Acharyas are translating this pronunciation as Mama means me, because of me, and Papa means sin. So I know because of my sin, I'm going to continuously chant Mama, Papa. I'm responsible, but then I forget what is the right motivation for me to perform austerities. What are the right austerities to perform so that they don't entangle us more in these modes of nature, and as opposed to that, elevate us so that we are very naturally able to connect with the Lord. So we'll jump on to the particular section of the Bhagavad Gita, verse number 14 to 17. But before that, a very interesting point that Prabhupada's made and Krishna is making in verse number 6, that if we do not recognize what are the right kind of austerities to perform, they are actually going to have an opposite reaction. In fact, it is also mentioned in the 6th verse translation that if the austerity is not bona fide by the scriptures, it actually is detrimental to our progress because it is causing harm to the material elements of this body, which is a gift from the Lord. And as devotees, we recognize the fact that we have a super soul living in our system as well. So unbona fide, unauthorized austerity not just causes harm to the material elements of the body, but also creates a lot of trouble for the super soul in our system. And therefore, it is not recommended to perform XYZ austerities. Look, for example, over here, for example, the austerity conducted by a demon called Bhaumasura. We all know Bhaumasura was a great demon who decided to perform an austerity and please Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, obviously being the kind God, agreed to grant him the boon. And what was the boon that Bhaumasura asked? He wanted the power to be able to finish anyone simply by touching his hand on someone's head. What a waste.
It is Vrutrasura.
Is
Huh?
it?
Is it Bhaumasura? No.
I read as Bhaumasura, Prabhu.
Okay. Okay, I'll find out in a minute.
Yeah, it's Bhaumasura. Vrutrasura fought with Indra.
Oh, yeah. So it is Bhaumasura. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for looking out for me. I know you're listening intently. Thank you. So what a waste of conducting such hardships and such austerity when all you want is someone else's destruction. Obviously, the Lord has his own ways of getting around that, because the moment Bhaumasura got the boon from Lord Shiva, what he wanted to do was test it on Lord Shiva himself. And in that state, Lord Shiva obviously ran and reached Lord Vishnu. And then Lord Vishnu, we all know, took the incarnation of, for more than one reason, so Mohini Murti. And then Mohini Murti engaged with Bhaumasura and proposed that, I will associate with you if you learn all the dance moves that I'm going to show. And obviously Bhaumasura was enchanted, and Mohini Murti danced in front of Bhaumasura, and Bhaumasura copied all the steps. Eventually came to a stage where Mohini Murti put her hand on her head and Bhaumasura did the same, and that's it. End of Bhaumasura's story. So just a small example from scriptures as to how futile it is to conduct austerity which is not recommended by the scriptures and is not bona fide. So any austerity conducted out of pride, false ego, lust, attachment for material enjoyment is not recommended and is a waste of the effort. So there is also actually a reference to a washerman in Krishna's time, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he tells us that when Krishna and Balaram arrived in Mathura on request of King Kamsa, and Uncle Akrura went to get them, Krishna and Balaram wanted to make their own way into the town, and at one point they met a fisherman who was washing King Kamsa's clothes. And they playfully requested the washerman to give the clothes to Krishna and Balaram to wear. And Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Bhagavat is telling that this washerman actually had conducted so many austerities in previous lives simply to come to a stage where he could have the Lord's association. But because of the undue influence of the modes of material nature and his association with Kamsa and evil people, he could not recognize the Lord. And of course, we know the story that the Lord then didn't really take the washerman's instruction, instead chopped the washerman's head simply by the touch of his finger and relieved him. So with this story, the other less takeaway is that whether we want to perform any austerity or sacrifice or no, we will have to do it whether willingly or by force. So we have a choice. While we have all these facilities, we can either engage in the practice of devotional service as recommended by the acharyas and Krishna and make little offerings. But if we don't do that, then all that we end up accumulating throughout our lives, one instance, death comes and it's all gone. So it'll be taken forcibly if you do not engage in willing, full sacrifice and therefore some level of austerity in trying to revive your relationship with the Supreme Lord. So with that, we'll come to the key verses that clearly describe what sort of austerity is recommended. And these are verses 14 to 17. So can I request any volunteer, maybe Rajakumar Govinda Prabhu, if you please read the translation and the purport for verse number 14, Prabhu.
I share the screen, or are you going to share it?
I'll just share it for him. Prabhu, can you see?
Yeah, did you say the translation and purport or just translation?
Both, please. Thank you.
Austerity of the body consists in worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master, and superiors like the father and mother, and in cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. The Supreme Godhead here explains the different kind of austerity and penance. Firstly, it's too small for me, the words. Can you make it a bit bigger? I'm sitting a bit far away.
Yeah.
Or maybe somebody else can even.
We can read it from here. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. The Supreme Godhead had here explained the different kind of austerity and penance. First, he explained the austerity and penance practiced by the body. One should offer or learn to offer respect to God or to demigods, the perfect qualified brahmanas and the spiritual master and superiors like mother, a father, mother, and any person who is conversant with Vedic knowledge. These should be given proper respect. One should practice cleanliness oneself externally and internally, and he should learn to become simple in behavior. He should not do anything which is not sanctioned by the scriptural injunction. He should not indulge in sex outside of married life, for sex is sanctioned in the scriptures only in marriage, not otherwise. This is called celibacy. These are penance and austerity as far as the body is concerned. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Sorry, it was a bit of a reading austerity for you.
My fault, my eye took it.
Yeah, so I think the key takeaway from the purport is that number one, the first type of austerity that is recommended is the austerity of the body, as to how to engage the facility we have of this body in trying to do what is recommended by the scriptures, only the scriptural injunction. And the process is very, very simple. If you read the purport, which we just did, it is not talking about any rocket science. These are all basic etiquettes of how a human being should generally discharge himself. For example, worship of the Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master, superiors like father and mother, and cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and non-violence. Imagine all of these, which are basic etiquettes of a cultured individual, are also understood as austerity for a lot of people in today's degraded condition of life, where the influence of the modes of nature is very, very high. Prabhupada, by his own example, has given us so many instructions. There is this, and there, like I said, no rocket science. There is a small story in this regard. Once a person approaches a yogi or a hermit who was known to have, very nice spiritual powers by his grace. So the disciple approaches the guru and says, I want to have powers like you, and I want to have the halo that you carry with you. So the guru said, yes, okay, come on, you'll have to just observe me. And the disciple moves in, starts to live next to the guru, and is observing the guru day in, day out, day in, day out. And after a few days, the disciple is questioning that I'm not really learning anything from observing what you're doing. You're doing the same basic principle, same basic activities every day. What about something really amazing that will give me some powers? So the guru responds that, this is all I do, and simply by practicing it again and again and again, we get to a stage where we get ourselves out of the influence of the modes of nature and rise to the level of goodness, and at a stage where we are able to then engage in a loving exchange with the Lord. There is a beautiful prayer written by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Guru Ashtakam, which we sing during Mangalarti. And one of the verse, Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaradan Mandiramarjanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Shayanyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam. So the spiritual master, by his own example, is teaching how to make use of the body, the facility body that we have, in cleaning the Lord's temple, offering the Lord different types of decorations, and creating a sacred space within our homes, not necessarily any rocket science. These are all simple things, and as devotees we are practicing with the Lord in our house. We have little deities, and the deities allow us that opportunity to treat the Lord as a person, have that exchange of giving him a shower, putting him to bed, waking him up, offering him food stuff, and If you're at that level, then have a daily conversation. Treat him like an individual. And this applies to everyone. Krishna says in so many places, Sarvasya chaham hridishani vishto. I am residing in the heart of not just Indians or Asians or Africans, but Sarvasya means every living being. Every living being. Then aham sarvasya prabhavo. I'm the source of not just Indian people or Vaishnavas or this sampradaya or that sampradaya, but every living being the Lord is connected with. So very simple process. The first austerity is the austerity of the body, and it simply means no one leg, close eyes positions, but using the facility that we have in the right way, as recommended by the scriptures, conducive to developing our loving relationship with the Lord. Okay, so let's move on to next verse. Gora Arti Mataji, can I request you to please read the translation and the purport for verse number 15?
Thank you.
I'll just bring it up on the screen and then quickly share it with you as well. Ready?
Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. One should not speak in such a way as to agitate the minds of others. Of course, when a teacher speaks, he can speak the truth for the instruction of his students. But such a teacher should not speak to those who are not his students, if he will agitate their minds. This is penance as far as talking is concerned. Besides that, one should not talk nonsense. The process of speaking in spiritual circles is to say something upheld by the scriptures. One should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. At the same time, such talk should be very pleasurable to the ear. By such discussions, one may derive the highest benefit and elevate human society. There is a limitless stock of Vedic literature, and one should study this. This is called penance of speech.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Wonderful. So once again, very, very simple instructions, austerity of speech consists of simply speaking the truth and simply say things that are pleasing to people. Some people find it so difficult. There is an interesting pastime from Ramayana, and we just take the message out of it without going too deep into it. So we know Lord Ram chose to go into exile to fulfill the wish of his father's boon. And Devi Sita and all the devotees of the Lord, they do these things to send us a message. So Devi Sita and Lord Ram are wandering in the forest, and something comes in Sita Devi's mind, and she says, so my dear husband, this bow and arrow you're carrying, is it just for show, or are you going to ever use it? What is the point of carrying this armor around you if you're just going to wander in the forest without really using it? Is it just show? So austerity of speech, knowing what not to say, or only saying words that are pleasing to the other person. So Lord Ram obviously is embodiment, of perfection in that avatar, and he decides not to speak zip and carries on walking. And then we know from Valmiki's Ramayana that Kharadushan, the two demons came, and Lord Ram is ready to slay them. And then Lakshman comes, my dear Lord, don't worry, I will take care of this. And Lord Ram says, no, Lakshman, my problem. I will resolve it. I will fix it. And Lakshman is saying, my Lord, these are so puny, tiny demons, they're not even worth your caliber. Why are you wasting your energies? Let me do it. And Lord Ram says, Lakshman, this is a family matter. Let me handle. I have to prove a point. So Lord Ram then takes upon, and we know that without breaking a sweat, 14,000 demons were killed within a space of a few minutes or hours as per their time. And then Devi Sita comes and says, wow, wow, my lord, I didn't even know that you had such amazing strength and ability. And good thing that you didn't display all this before the marriage. Otherwise, my father would have married all my sisters to you. Imagine what Lord Ram would think, because he was a personification of perfection, Purushottam, Maryada Purushottam, single woman man in that incarnation. So just some examples of the instruction that we need to conduct austerity of speech, and it's not to twist your tongue in a certain way that you can make a noise, but simply knowing what to say and not saying that which is not pleasing to the others. How difficult is that? There is another example of austerity of speech which can cause an otherwise reaction. We are reading in Srimad Bhagavatam every Wednesday. Gauranath Raj Prabhu is guiding the sessions very nicely of a Manduk Muni once, and this comes in the story of Vidura. Manduk Muni is conducting penances, and he is just deciding on one day that he's not going to speak. So what happens is robbers decide to come into the area, and they hide the booty in Muni's hut and then disappear or hide themselves. And then after a while, the policemen come from the king and they are inquiring, and Manduk Muni is observing the austerity of not going to speak today. So he's just trying to make sign languages. The policemen didn't understand, and as a result, they said, okay, your hut, we found the booty here, we're going to book you as well. They take Manduk Muni away, and then we know from the past times that it came to a point where he was about to get hanged to death, and then he engages in that discussion with Yamaraj, etc. But the point that we're trying to make is, what was the benefit of conducting that austerity of no speech when the whole matter could have simply been resolved by simply using speech where required? The instruction also is that ideally we should be giving feedback and instructions to one, if someone's your direct disciple, or two, if you are directly responsible for them as a guardian. Otherwise, it's generally observed that people are not very open to receiving feedbacks, and sometimes we see it in our own close circles. So simple instruction: austerity of speech, no tongue twisting, no having to memorize complicated formulas of how to live peaceful life. Simply knowing what to say, when, and not to say what is not pleasing to the others. How difficult it is. Right, so let's get on to the last verse of this topic, austerity of speech. And of course, the other instruction from the translation from Prabhupada is that we need to use the ability of speech in a manner that not only is pleasing to others, but is also beneficial. So every third Friday of the month, we do Bhajan Sandhya, where we sing the glories of the Lord. That is an opportunity for us to use the ability of speech. Gauranath Raj Prabhu is looking for more and more people to take up. And as I said at the start, Prabhupada actually wanted every single individual to become a guru and use the ability of speech in the right way. And he also gave the formula. He said, it's not very difficult to become a guru. Simply repeat what Krishna is saying and you'll be a guru. And again, the same bit, once we've taken faith and shelter in the holy name of the Lord, and taking upon the instructions of the acharyas, it is our obligation to share it with as many people as possible, not just keep it for ourselves. It's simply similar to how if we get happiness by doing a material activity, do we not tell the friends, oh, I saw that James Bond movie and it's great action and great stunts, you also watch and get entertained. A similar principle applies, if we are taking pleasure in a certain activity which is helping us, then our obligation to share it with as many people as possible. Right, so verse number 16, Rather, Vinod Prabhu, can I request you or Sita Mataji to read the translation and the purport to verse number 16, please?
Okay.
I'll just bring it up on my screen. 1 second. Here you go, Prabhu.
Translation.
And satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. Purport. To make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. It should be so trained that it can be always thinking of doing good for others. The best training for the mind is gravity in thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. To purify one's nature is to become Krishna consciousness. Satisfaction of the mind can be obtained only by taking the mind away from thoughts of sense enjoyment. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. In the present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways for sense gratification. And so there is no possibility of the mind becoming satisfied. The best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories. And in the Puranas and the Mahabharata, one can take advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. The mind should be devoid of duplicity, and one should think of the welfare of all. Silence means that one is always thinking of self-realization. The person in Krishna consciousness observes perfect silence in the sense. Control of the mind means detaching the mind for sense enjoyment. One should be straightforward in his dealings and thereby purify his existence. All these qualities together constitutes austerity in mental activities.
Thank you so much, Sita Mataji. That was clear reading. Thank you so much for that. So we know mind can be our best friend and can be our enemy, worst enemy at the same time. We all have experiences of how it entices us into committing various acts of sense enjoyment and then loathes us right after and makes us feel bad and then momentarily turning to the Lord and then going back. So since we are active, conscious living beings and activity is a symptom of consciousness, we have the consciousness in our system, we are going to continue to act in some way or the other the instruction from the scriptures is to engage the mind in doing such activities that are recommended by the scriptures. A very, very simple process of chanting, for instance, if you analyze it, what does it do? You're given a set of beads in your hands, therefore your sense of touch is engaged. Then you are asked to chant the mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, so your speech is engaged. Then the instruction is to hear the mantra very carefully, because we know that chanting is also hearing, and hearing means the first step of devotional service, Shravanam. So touch, speech, and hearing, all three senses are getting engaged. And we close our eyes so that additional visual distraction is not going in. And the mind is focused then on listening to the reverberation of the spiritual sound vibration. So engaging the mind in the right process, right activities recommended by the scriptures, as opposed to switching it off. It won't work. If you were to simply try and sit in silent meditation, trying to focus on this, that, and the other. We know that, and doctors would confirm, or psychologists, that a mind is capable of having hundreds and thousands of thoughts every minute. It is not possible to keep it idle without giving it the proper engagement. There is a wonderful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that I'd like to share with you, with the blessings of devotees we've tried to memorize, and it's from the 6th canto, chapter 3, verse number 22. Etavaneva lokesmin pumsa dharma parasmita bhakti yogo bhagavate tannama grahanadibihi. So this is spoken obviously by Sukadeva Goswami, because he's explaining the whole thing. But the name of the chapter 3, is Yamaraj instructs the messengers. So we know the story of Ajamila, where he was living his life so sinfully and his time had finished. And then the Yamadutas went to claim him. But we know the story, Vishnudutas came. So the Yamadutas were very disappointed, and they came back to Yamaraj, and they complained that, what is this? He was ours to take and we were not allowed. How do you explain this? So Yamaraj himself, who was also a great empowered devotee of the Lord, he explains, and I'll read the verbatim for you from the purport. It is a fact that even a chronically sinful person who chants the holy name of the Lord, although not completely without offenses, does not take another material birth. Prabhupada saying this direct instruction from Yamaraj. Such is the power of engaging in the process of chanting the holy name, engaging the mind in activities recommended by the scriptures. And also here the exact translation of the verse. Devotional service beginning with the chanting of the holy name of the Lord is the ultimate religious principle for the living entity in the human society, not just Vaishnavas, non-Vaishnavas, Asians, Indians, British, Irish, Scottish, Liverpudlians, Mancunians. No, every living entity is referred to. This is a clear instruction. In fact, Bhagavatam is full of such amazing instructions. There is another one right at the start. Savaya pumsam parodharma. Savaya pumsam parodharma. The topmost duty, topmost occupation of the living being is to chant the holy name of the Lord. Savaya pumsam parodharma yato bhaktir adokshaje ahetuki aparati hata ye atma suprasidati. So the instruction is that the topmost engagement is to chant the holy names of the Lord, engage in activities that glorify Him, and in that way um, help revive our own forgotten connection with the Lord. And that is the only way to achieve permanent satisfaction. Yayatma suprasidati. That is the way by which a living being will be able to achieve permanent, lasting happiness. And how is that devotional service to be performed? Ahetuki aparatihata. Ahetuki means unmotivated. Aparatihata means uninterrupted. Continuous as a practice, day in, day out, day in, day out, every day, especially on special days like today is Ekadashi. We know the 11th day of the waxing and the waning moon, we observe little austerity of keeping away from grains as minimum. And of course, the idea is that if we do not have to invest in preparing elaborate meals, then that time can be spent in chanting more, in reading more, in listening to the instructions of the acharyas more, or doing any devotional activity which helps the mind stay focused, stay engaged, conduct only activities that are recommended by the scriptures and the acharyas, and thereby help us achieve permanent kind of happiness, not temporary happiness which we are deriving by futile physical austerities which people are engaging in all the time. So I'd like to conclude with that. It's nearly time. I was given till 2:15 to share the message. Summary once again is, please recognize our relationship with the Lord, and not just recognize, translate that into meaningful actions which demonstrate the expression of the recognition of our relationship. Austerity does not need to be any rocket science. Simply at the body level, use the facility of body in devotional service recommended by the scriptures. Austerity of speech, don't say anything that is not pleasing to anyone, and know what to speak, when to speak. And austerity of the mind, simply to engage the mind by feeding it activities that are recommended by the scriptures, such as chanting of the holy names. And we just read from the Bhagavatam, devotional service is the supreme occupation of any living entity, and only that can give us temporary, permanent happiness. But how should that be done? Ahetuki aparatihata. Unmotivated, uninterrupted, regular practice day in, day out. You see, we have taken so many births, it's just unimaginable how rare it is to get this human form of life. So you can also imagine the amount of contamination we have, in our minds and in our hearts. And therefore, for some people, it can take longer, but we need to have faith in that process. So with that, I'd like to bring the session to a close, and we have a minute or so if anybody had any comments or questions or feedback to give, which is always good for my personal improvement, either now online or offline, whatever works for you. Thank you so much, and please excuse me for any offenses I may have conducted, but thank you for your time. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for the very nice class.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for your time, Prabhu.
My understanding is, in my life, the way I'm seeing is, over a period, suffering is increasing by disease, mental problems, because people are not following the austerity, voluntary austerity. Because of that, Lord is forcing disease, suffering, various ways.
Absolutely.
So we have to follow voluntarily austerity to minimize our suffering.
Absolutely, Prabhu. Wonderful point. Do it voluntarily while you have the facility. Otherwise, at the end of it, everything is going to get taken anyway, and you'll be forced to perform
Yeah.
austerity.
Yeah.
That's true. Thank you. Wonderful realization, bro.
But just something to that, I don't know, you just elaborate on that. Something in that and if we don't austerity is synonymous with voluntarily.
Yeah, so
It's forced upon us. That's it won't have the same effect. I don't know what you.
that's true. The point is that the Lord, He's Param Bija Pita. He's our all-loving Father, and He knows that what is in our interest. He has a plan for all of us. So if we are intelligent living beings, we will perform the austerity of body, mind, and speech, like we just discussed, and try and get closer to Him. But if we are not being very intelligent, then He intervenes and puts us into a position where we are forced to think about Him. That's forced austerity, which is not the best way, but the only way for some people who don't do it voluntarily. And when we talk about voluntary austerity, these are simple etiquettes, basic courtesies that every cultured individual should be demonstrating anyway. No rocket science. Does that make sense, Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
So any other comments from anyone?
I've not seen the chat, Prabhu. If you can...
Yes, I've seen there are a couple of comments from, there is one more question, it seems. Yes?
Puji, austerity and in general, difficulty is synonymous with difficulties.
Yeah.
It's not the most favorable word we want to hear.
Yes.
We want to be in comfort zone. We don't. I mean, the moment I know the word Ekadashi comes in, we can't eat this. So, do you have any advice? How can make austerity a bit more favorable word to us?
Yes.
So as soon as we hear the austerity, don't run away or block our ears.
Yes, no, I agree. Austerity seems like on the outset a difficult word to implement the instructions in. But the message from what we've just read is that just make these activities a regular practice. And then you're doing it as very natural. So when we say austerity of speech, we're simply saying don't say anything that's not pleasing to the others. And if we make that a habit, then it's not austerity, it's a way of life. So really, the idea is to imbibe these instructions as a way of life more than being seasonal about these things. Oh, today is Ekadashi, today I'm not going to do XYZ things, but other days I will make a concession. Then it will become difficult for you to perform it occasionally. But if you do these things as a matter of practice, then it's not austerity. It's just natural that the living being should be doing anyway.
So a constant reminder.
Constant practice. And the reminder that if we don't do it willingly, we'll be put into this situation forcibly, which is what unfortunately is happening with so many people, so many unfortunate people. We have such a nice facility at ISKCON Manchester where we're taking time to come together and remind ourselves. Please make use of this, sincere thanks to the entire temple management for keeping up with this time and space and not letting it fill with any other XYZ activity, which we have to do as part of maintaining our families and bodies and extended families and whatnot. So thank you once again, Prabhu. Any other comment?
So Sumadhura Radhika Mataji, she always appreciates everyone. Very good quality. Hare Krishna, thanks very much for an excellent class, very wonderful stories. And then we have Meenakshi Mataji. It was such a lovely class, time just flew. And others as well, like Niru Mataji. Yeah, they were all saying that Ram Nityanda Prabhu appreciating. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, firstly, for tuning in today. And thank you, Madhakumar Prabhu, for taking time to prepare and deliver this lecture. And I can see that there is a improved attendance on our classes since we have introduced these systematic classes, structured classes. Wonderful. I can see today around 30 viewers altogether, both on YouTube and here. And devotees, I can see that they are definitely, they like it. They like these classes. Even on Chaitanya Charitamrita last Friday, we saw a number of viewers. So I kindly request, please do take advantage of these classes. And if I understand from today's class is that everything can be changed just by associating with the spiritual master, bona fide spiritual master. We came in touch with Prabhupada and Prabhupada's disciples, and our life is trying to transform. And the main thing that is that everything, if you want to follow certain things, scriptures are the basis. If I understand what to be done, what not to be done, how to be done, how not to be done, is given in the scriptures, whether it is mind or anything. So Prabhupada had put so much effort, writing these books. Let's come together and hear very nicely, support one another. And when people today, I've seen more devotees are opening cameras, and we are very grateful for that as well. So it motivates the speaker as well. But thank you very much. And next Sunday, the topic will be charity, 3 types of charity. Yes, everybody, charity is very much appreciated in material world. But come to next class and you'll find out what is the best type of charity that you can do. And on Friday, we have a guest speaker from Birmingham who will be doing, Raghupati Prabhu will be doing Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he will be summarizing chapter 8 of Adilila, where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who is the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, receives the order to write Chaitanya Charitamrita. So please do take advantage of these classes. Yes, Madhakumar Prabhu, you wanted to share something?
I was just saying that it's very right to take the instruction from the right bona fide source. We know that we are spiritual beings, and this body is essentially a tool. It's a tool for our self-realization. But the tool, like any other apparatus or equipment, comes with a manual, and the manual of instruction are the scriptures. And if we need any guidance in understanding the instruction of these manuals, then we must approach bona fide spiritual masters or anybody who is in the position of giving us the right instruction. Just on the note of sharing and caring, Prue, is it appropriate to share about the Shasdan initiative now?
Yes, you got a few minutes. Yeah.
Thank you, Prue. So, we've been talking about how it is our obligation to share this knowledge and give everyone an opportunity to experience the loving peace and happiness by the process of self-realization. We've set up what is called a Shastradan fund, and we are requesting devotees to make small contributions, whatever the occasion is or no, towards a Shastradan fund. And the intent is to try and make the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam available to as many people as possible. So for you, it could be a 5, 10, 1, 2, 3 pound donation on an occasion or not. But for us, what we will do is when the pot reaches a size, we will subsidize the cost or even give free these amazing literatures to people who are not able to otherwise afford. So please think about the opportunities where you'd like to make some contribution to the development and learning of other not so unfortunate individuals. Please take time. In today's time, we don't have the temple physically open, so there are limited opportunities to contribute and participate in this process. And here it is one such option. So please keep that in mind. And if you have any questions on how it works, please approach Guru Nataraj Prabhu, any temple management, or myself. We'll be happy to help. Thank you once again for all the encouragement and all the well wishes and nice, lovely comments. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we'll end the session here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grandaraj Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo. So see you all on Friday.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.